Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is blast. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear blast used is to mean to blow up, break apart, create some sort of explosion, or even shoot something off. Now, when I think of this particular definition, my mind sort of goes to construction, right? And this idea sometimes, in order to build something or redo, improve upon something, we might need to first break something apart. So, again, I kind of have this mental image of concrete being blasted or broken apart. Another way you might hear blast used is to mean to be very loud or make loud noises. So, again, we might talk about horns or whistles blasting, making these particular loud noises. A third way you might hear blast used is to mean to criticize someone harshly or criticize something harshly. Think this particular verb, used in this way, has gotten more popular with social media. And I'm going to talk a little more about that later in a related phrase as well. A fourth way you might hear blast used is to mean to have a severely detrimental effect on. Again, it could be someone or something. You might hear about one thing blasting or kind of worsening the condition of something else. Another way you might hear blast used is to mean to attack vigorously. So sometimes politicians, particularly ones that are opponents, will be described as blasting the other, so attacking them for a particular idea or a particular issue, or I should say, a particular position on an issue. You should know that blast is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, you're going to add ing to form blasting. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made by adding ed. Our base verb, blast, ends in a T sound. So our past tense ending is going to make an id sound. And we're going to add an extra syllable as we say it. So it should sound like this: blasted, blasted. Okay? Now, there are so many different phrasal verbs that use blast, so we're going to focus our discussion on those today. I'll try and point out some of the various verb tenses that my example sentences are using, but we're not going to do any sort of individual verb tense practice today. The first phrasal verb that we'll discuss is blast away. As you can see from the notes on my screen, this can have a few different meanings. We're going to talk about three of them today. The first way to use blast away kind of ties back to that first definition. So we're talking about blowing something up that had been solid, particularly if we're using explosives, right? So something really strong and powerful to cause this breaking away. An example of this might be: they are blasting away the granite to create a rural access road. Right? So granite would be a type of rock here. So this idea, it's being blown up in order to create this new road. A second way we can use blast away is to mean to be extremely loud. An example of this might be: our neighbor's stereo is blasting away and I can't hear myself think. Okay, so here you can imagine a really loud stereo, lots of music coming from this particular place. And maybe you've had this idea of there being so much noise that you're just unable to think or process one's thoughts. Now, I should note the stereo is blasting away as an example of the present progressive, so, or present continuous, you might know it as that. So I'm describing something happening now. The first sentence was also present progressive, so are blasting away. This is probably used to show an event in progress, right? It's going to take a lot of work to blow up. solid rock. A third way you might hear blast away used is to mean to criticize someone or something quite harshly. An example of this: concerned parents blasted away at the school board during the public meeting. Here's an example of a simple past tense sentence. While I don't have a time signal here, I might have kind of a time in mind. It might be part of the article I was reading, sort of noting when this meeting occurred. But this is something that's happening a great deal in the United States right now. Parents with a variety of different opinions and thoughts and feelings on a few different subjects have been coming to public meetings with the school boards, attacking the school board members, criticizing them very harshly. And so we might see this verb used to describe what's happening. The next phrasal verb we're going to look at is blast down. This is used to mean that someone, something is proceeding rapidly or very aggressively. So I heard a recent example of this as I was watching the Olympics in the past few weeks. So the sentence I heard was, those skiers were blasting down the slopes. Okay, so here we're talking about people, gosh, they were traveling in X 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour down hills on skis, which just blows my mind. I can't imagine doing that. Were blasting down is an example of the past progressive. So I'm just talking about an action that was in progress. Let's continue looking at some more phrasal verbs with blast. Our next word is blast off. And again, this can have a number of different meanings. I've identified 5 that you might hear. So the first way you might hear blast off used is to mean to shoot upward from the ground. And I chose today's verb blast largely because of this phrasal verb. So, in one of my English classes, we've been reading some stories about astronauts and space travel, and this particular phrasal verb was used, right? So, we were describing a shuttle shooting upward from the ground and moving toward space. An example of this in a sentence: when will the rocket blast off? Here's an example of a simple future question using will. A second way you might hear blast off used is to mean to ignite an exploding device. An example of this: every 4th of July, our friends blast off fireworks. Right? So, this idea, they ignite them. They're going to light them to create the different colors, lights, smoke, whatever type of firework they might have. A third way we can use blast off could mean to amputate by explosion. Now, this definition, a little scarier, right? So amputate would mean kind of you're losing a limb, an appendage, right? And then this unfortunately does happen often with fireworks. So you might hear maybe a parent tell their children, no fireworks, you'll blast off a finger, right? You're going to lose a finger using these fireworks. You'll blast off is another example of the simple future. And I'm not sure if I talked about the last one. Every 4th of July, there's a simple present tense use. We're talking about a habit, a routine. They set off fireworks. Our fourth way to use blast off is to mean to use a lot of force to remove something. An example of this might be, they're going to blast off the graffiti using a power washer. So here's another simple future. This time we're using be going to. Maybe talking about someone's plan here. They've rented this a power washer. Again, has a lot of force. It's stronger than just your normal garden hose. And this idea that they're going to use the force to remove the paint that has been put on maybe the side of a building or something like that. Our last way to use blast off Is just to mean to leave a destination very quickly. So this is pretty informal. You might also hear some people say blast off for in this way. I'll talk about that more with my example sentence. My example is, we'll blast off after school to make sure we get to work on time. So here someone is implying we're going to leave really quickly. This is another simple future sentence using will. So another way someone could kind of share that same idea, that same meaning might be we'll blast off for work, right? Indicating where they're going to go after school. Those two sentences would have about the same meaning. Now, let's spend a little time looking at some words and phrases that are related to our verb blast. The first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. So we have the exact same spelling, the exact same pronunciation. The noun blast could be referring to an explosion or some sort of explosive firing. An example of this might be, there was a blast just before midnight and the fire department was called. So here, right, there could have been some sort of explosion. Maybe it caused a fire, or maybe people were worried that the explosion was causing a fire. That's what that sentence is describing. A second way we can use the noun blast is to refer to a strong gust of wind or air. I sometimes hear this noun used as I watch weather reports. Meteorologists will say something like, tomorrow there will be strong blasts throughout the day, right? They might say strong blasts of cold air, or perhaps it's just wind, not really cold or hot. A third way we can use the noun blast is to refer to a single loud note of some horn or a whistle. An example of this might be, the train gave several blasts before approaching the crossing. Okay, so you might be able to sort of picture this, or kind of have a sound in your mind, kind of that woo woo, right? That loud note of a horn. That's what we're talking about with that last definition of the noun. Another related word you might hear is the noun blaster. So this could be a person or a thing, an object that emits or uses blasts. An example of this might be, did they use the laser blasters to fight the bad guys? So I feel like sometimes I hear this in connection to sci-fi movies or other sort of action-based literature or TV as well. So this idea that it's kind of got a laser firing or exploding from it. Now I have two phrases that perhaps you hear, and I just wanted to make sure we understand those. The first is to have a blast. Now, this really isn't going to be connected to explosions or wind or whistles. It really just means to have a fun time, an exciting time while you're doing something. So you might hear someone say something like this, I'm having a blast on vacation. Right? Just another way to say, I'm having a great time. The last phrase we're going to look at today is to be on blast or put on blast, might be another way to hear it. This is going to come back to that idea of the verb where we're criticizing someone harshly. So this phrase, to be on blast or be put on blast, means that someone is being embarrassed publicly. And generally, this is happening through social media. So it could be Facebook, Twitter, etc. But what's happening is someone is trying to share something someone has done, something has said, and maybe publicly denounce them, say, this is wrong, this is bad, maybe they're a horrible person for this reason. Okay, so an example of this, I thought long and hard, and I didn't want to use too real of an example because I might not have firsthand knowledge. So we're going to be very generic here and just say, the man has been put on blast by several women alleging creepy behavior. This is something that has happened with many famous people now, but this idea of women sharing, this person said this or did this to me. It was wrong. It made me feel uncomfortable, unsafe, something like that, right? But they're making sure lots of people know it. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.